Hey everyone, welcome into another edition of Long Ball. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun Blue Jays writer Rob Longley. And Rob, here we are getting set for the second half of the Blue Jays season, where they currently sit first place in the American League East, a couple of games up on the New York Yankees, and some big games coming out of the break here. First up against the San Francisco Giants this weekend. They, of course, fighting for a wild card spot against in the National League, and then you've got the Yankees back in town for another three games. I would be surprised if it's going to be a sweep this time around, but
No
you
chance.
never know. And then after that, it's the Detroit Tigers who have been dominating the AL Central all season here. So it's going to be quite a difficult schedule, like I said, coming out of the break. But as we look to these final few months here for the regular season, what are your biggest storylines for the Blue Jays heading into the second half?
Now, there's a whole bunch of them, Rob, but let's start with out of the gate, right? This team has shown a lot of resolve and a lot of resilience throughout the year, and to get themselves in this position, a two-game lead in the American League East. They wobbled a little bit at the end, losing 3 or 4 on that last road trip, and I suppose there was a bit of weariness involved there. But the 10-game win streak to get them to the top of the division, including the 4-game sweep of the Yankees in Toronto, which isn't going to happen next week, by the way. I don't think they're going to sweep them again. That really showed a lot. But here you start the second half, the unofficial second half, with stern tests against three really good teams, and I guess we're going to maybe get to a little bit more of an idea of what this team is all about, how strong they really are, how they can handle these kinds of tests that they're going to get the rest of the way. Baseball gets a lot more serious once you get past the trade deadline and into August and September. And everything we've seen from the group so far is that they respond well. So this first 10-game stretch will be very interesting in my mind, and will show how strong that resolve is. I think if you're talking about storylines, you just can't stop talking about Vlad Guerrero Jr. He's having a fine season, and that seems to be the descriptor of his season, a fine season. But you don't pay a dude $500,000 in an extension. People say, well, he's not collecting on the extension right now, but come on, that's not part of the argument. You don't pay a guy like that kind of money to be on pace to hit 20 home runs. They need more production from Vlad. Keep getting on base all you want with walks. That's great. Keep hitting the ball hard, but be more productive. And Vlad knows it too. John Schneider, the manager, has said many times that he thinks that Vlad is almost there, that he's just something a little off, and then he's going to get on this big heater and everything's going to be fine in the world. But I don't know if you noticed it, Rob, but in the last half a dozen games or so before the All-Star break, you could see the frustration building in a little bit with Vlad after an ugly at bat. He wore it harder than he was earlier in the season, so he clearly knows that he should be better and can be better. And a Vlad Guerrero Jr. heater could really take this team on quite a run. I know we're going to talk more about the trade deadline coming up, but that's going to be an important storyline. And after they get through this 10-game stretch that we talked about, Rob, it's only 3 or 4 days until that deadline, so it's going to come quick. And we're going to see how aggressive General Manager Ross Atkins is at this point. We'll talk about it more as I mentioned, but to me, this is the most critical trade deadline in his tenure. Another storyline is, can George Springer keep it up? Everyone keeps waiting for him to fall off a cliff, but the more he plays with confidence, and the more, as somebody who's around the team a lot put it to me the other day, a real love for the game again. Maybe what we've seen from Springer is for real. Maybe he is. It was the time in his career where he shouldn't have been a cleanup hitter anymore, and he's really responded to both the coaching from new hitting coach David Popkins, from maybe a fresher attitude, and from hitting for a different type of production, and that is to say power, from where he is in the lineup. Maybe he can sustain this. Like, how many of his 16 home runs have you seen that are wall scrapers? Most of them are bombs. Like, he hits these towering home runs that he was hitting in 2016 when he was with the Houston Astros. So, that's can he sustain that? There's a whole bunch of them. I'll just give you one more, and that would be, to me, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when Daulton Varsho comes back, what happens when Anthony Santander comes back, what happens when Jimenez comes back, and what happens with whatever acquisitions offensively they get at the trade deadline, how John Schneider continues to manage. I think he's done an outstanding job to this point. And as we've mentioned in an earlier edition of Long Ball, has put himself in the discussion for American League Manager of the Year. But how is he going to get all these guys get playoff time? And if Santander doesn't respond, like, do you just sit him on the bench as a bench bat, even though you're paying him all that money? I think that's what the Blue Jays will do. I think that they feel they are in a situation where they are in an all in type of environment where we're playing to win every night. We don't care about who's making what. We're going to give ourselves the best opportunity to win on each given occasion. And I think that Schneider will continue to manage the hot hands. It's just going to be a little bit more crowded to do so, and there's going to be some uncomfortable roster decisions. But to me, that'll how Schneider and the team navigate that will be one of the storylines going forward as well.
Look, definitely a good problem to have if you're John Schneider, having maybe too many good players to
Right.
try to find playing time for. But as you said, with the trade deadline coming up in a couple of weeks here, you would think the Blue Jays are going to make some additions, and then that'll make it potentially even more challenging. But that is definitely where you want to be instead of where this team was a year ago. You mentioned the bombs that George Springer has been hitting. We saw an interesting wrinkle at the All-Star Game, Rob, for the first time since they implemented the tiebreaker rule for the All-Star Game. We saw a swing off, which I think really caught a lot of people's attention, where they brought out the whole L netting and did a whole sort of batting practice session, or sort of reminiscent of a home run derby the night before. And it was the National League coming out on top with a huge performance there by Kyle Schwarber. Very gimmicky, of course. And, you're always going to have your detractors when you do something like that. But if there was ever a game, I guess, to sort of feature that wrinkle, Rob, that might have been it.
Yeah, I guess the first question I would ask is since when does MLB channel their inner NHL and go all gimmicky to decide a game? But you know what? It was fine. It was as a one-off. I don't see it as something that will ever come into the game, but as a one-off on a game on two nights, really, that's all about entertainment. The home run derby has become such a huge success over the last decade or so. So if you integrate a little bit of that into a tie ball game to settle the score, why not? Right? The fans are there to be entertained. I think the players didn't mind it. I mean, some of the players that had reportedly left the ballpark earlier, you might have wanted to see them in that competition, like Vlad Guerrero and Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani and guys like that. But as you mentioned, Rob, Kyle Schwarber certainly stole the show. He really put on a show to decide that game, and it was fun in a game that is supposed to have an element of fun to it. It was fine, and I don't think there's any debate that the Major League Baseball All-Star Game remains the best of any of the All-Star Games. It's the closest thing to a legitimate competition of any of the All-Star Games. And so if you're just throwing a gimmick on it at the end of it to decide it with something that people love anyway, they love to see baseball players hit home runs. Why not as a one-off?
Yeah, definitely worked out this time, but a lot of things had to come together in order for that to happen. So it
Sure.
doesn't seem like we're going to be seeing it every year, but Major League Baseball, for once, doing something actually pretty cool, which is not exactly their MO over the last little bit here. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below for Rob Longley. I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you on the next one.